Hey folks, Storm here with another large-scale figure for you all. This time it's Mizora from Baldur's Gate 3, great video game that I enjoyed myself. We're going to be taking a lot of the lessons that I've taught you guys so far between dry brushing and different types of pre-shading, colorful pre-shading, complementary pre-shading, and we're going to be doing a lot of that stuff on Mizora here to create some really nice effects. As you can see here, she's quite colorful, and we even have some cool resin effects that we're going to be playing with to fill up that wine glass that's in her hand. So let's unpack all these details, shall we? As always, we're going to start by cleaning up our print and test fitting everything, and you can see I used some blue tack to put that thing together. I'm going to also fill up any gaps with some thick CA or maybe some epoxy putty as needed. Then we move on to the priming stage where I just paint everything black. I mean, it's as simple as that. You can use whichever primer you like. I used Vallejo in this case, but again, it depends on what you like. I just like to use a black primer because it makes a good base for contrasting. So speaking of base, we're going to start with the base here by doing some dry brushing on stone. You guys have seen me do this back in my Rogue video a while ago, but we're going to do something very similar. I tried painting this one a little bit more brown than black, and you can see what I'm doing is just bringing out the highlights of the stones with different colors of brown and grays, just to make a little bit of a visual contrast here on this base. We don't want the base to stand out too much because our main character is going to be sitting on it, but we do want to add a little bit of flavor. And then the last thing I did was just highlight the shadows with some Citadel paints here. So after this, we're going to be able to move on to our character, and we're going to start with something that I think most folks like to just kind of get out of the way, or maybe you put it off to the end, but we're going to do flesh tones. So Mizora has a little bit different of flesh tones because she's more of a grayish, like cold fleshed figure. So we're going to start, as we always do, with the black primer. We're going to highlight with the white on tops. Now this is actually like a zenithal, a highlight. I'm using a reference photo for this to get my zenithal right, and what I'm actually doing is using an off-white to start, not a just flat white, and this is just a zenithal highlight. And then what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the shadows with this bright purple, and the reason we're going to do this is because this purple is going to get covered up with some shades that I'm going to show you here in a minute. And when we cover up the purple, it's going to give us that nice cold shadow, but it won't be black. And remember, I've been talking to you guys for a few weeks now about colorful pre-shading, because one of the things that I really want to try to bring to this art is colorful figures, not just desaturated figures that you see so often. We want to use shading, but not make our things look funny. So that's why I'm putting this bright purple in all the shadowy areas, including the wings here. So here's the flesh colors I'm going to be using. For those of you that always ask for flesh tones, this is out of my norm. So we got pale flesh, cold flesh, and frozen flesh. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to start with the pale flesh, I would think, and we're going to be adding that in over the top. So it actually looks like I did not do that here, so I made a liar of myself. I started with the coldest flesh, the shadow flesh, and went over the purple areas. So you can see how it kind of blends the shadows of the bright purple and the dark purple, which is actually out of the norm. Usually I use the highlights first, so apparently I must have had a good idea at the time. So it is some time since I did this. So anyway, enough of me rambling. So then I came back over with the base color, I would call it, which was the cold flesh, the light purple flesh tone. And we're going to just do that over top of all the highlights we did earlier. And you can see how we're just making essentially some contrast between those shadowed areas and the zenithal highlight areas. And we're just being careful to essentially, we don't want to cover up those shadows, right? We want to cover up the white zenithal that we put down, because we're essentially using the white and the black as our basis, right? Like that's literally guiding where we're going to spray with our airbrush. Keep that in mind. That initial zenithal highlight's really good for that. And here you can see I'm doing the same thing on the wings. I already had painted the purple on here, so we're going to go over it with that cold flesh over the bony parts of her wings. And then the next step is to actually take that highlight, which was the pale flesh, and we're just going to highlight the tops, or the parts of the skin that are going to be exposed to the most amount of light. And like here on her chest, just the upper parts. The idea is we're just creating that contrast between the base color and the shadow color. If you're trying to do any kind of pre-shading or post-shading, you always want to have at least 3 shades. That way it looks more natural. If you only have 2 shades, that's okay. But if you have everything one flat shade, it's going to look just like a toy. And you don't want it to look like that. Now this next step is more into the colorful pre-shading that I've been talking to you guys about for quite a few weeks now. Here what we're going to do is we're going to paint the thin parts of her wings, which is like the skin part I should say. We're going to paint it blue, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to create a nice base for us then to apply yellow in what I would consider like the thinner areas, so it's kind of like bumpy. So we have like thicker skinned areas and thinner skinned areas. And what that's going to do is create some really cool lighting effects, because we're going to do blue and then we're going to do yellow. And the reason we're going to do these colors is because when we take a transparent red and go over top of the yellow and blue, what we're actually going to get is that the blue is going to turn to a purple color and the yellow is going to turn to orange. And that's because of our color wheel. We know that, and that's why we need to know our color theory in order to do little tricks like this. We need to know what our complementary colors are, and we need to know what colors will shift in which direction. And transparent colors are a really great way that we can use this colorful pre-shading and take advantage of the cool effects it offers us. So you can see here what I'm doing is just spraying just right over top of the areas that I covered in blue. There's no masking with this effect, because if we get a little overspray on the purple, so what? It all blends together, almost acts like a filter over the entire thing. And you can see in the end we have beautiful purples and oranges. There's no blues and yellows in there. It looks really good. And the last step I did was just take a little bit of orange at the bottoms of the wings where it would be the thinnest, just again to add a little bit of visual texture to it. And you can see we have some beautiful looking wings there. To me, this is the highlight of her build, because I mean really you're gonna see this first. Like when you see Mizora, you're gonna see her wings. Now moving on to her main body, what I did was I pre-shaded with just grays, because her dress is like a bluish gray color, so I didn't want to just paint it over black. It wouldn't have looked right. So what I did was I used some various shades of gray to do some pre-shading, and then some dark gray to create some shadows, because then we also need to take care of the little pattern that she has on her chest here on her chest piece. So we're going to be using one of my favorite techniques that I keep coming back to, because it's so simple and it's so quick and it's so easy to use. Beginners can use it, experienced people can use it, and if you bash dry brushing, then maybe you just haven't figured it out. So I just think it's such a nice little trick, such a nice technique for bringing out small details like this here. So I'm just using white on this brush and I'm dry brushing these little patterns and stuff that she has on her dress. And this is going to make it real easy then that when we go to use some transparent paints, that's still going to show up. And here's what I'm going to do. So I haven't used these Army speed painters yet. I bought them a while ago, never had a reason to use them until now. So I wanted to make a transparent paint that matched her dress color, and I actually had to mix some gray, white, and blue together to get a nice shade that actually matched her color. And if I hadn't had these speed paints, it wouldn't have actually worked, because I didn't have anything to mix. I tried so many different variations before I got that color to work. So this other tool that I got recently is this gold marker from AK. So it actually is like a liquid pigment marker, and I tell you what, this one is different than their new real color markers that I reviewed a little while ago, but because it actually flows out the end. But this gold is so beautiful, and it looks like gold plating when it comes out. It's so metallic. Now you might want to paint things in non-metallic golds, but I actually like metallics. I think it adds a nice shine. I mean, look at those, even those little beads on her dress really pop out when you paint it with this gold stuff. I mean, this stuff comes out like liquid gold. It's absolutely gorgeous. And after that, we can take off our masking putty and kind of see how everything came together. There's still more work to be done, like the gold piece around her neck there, her necklace, and we can see how that looks when it's done. And I also used that dark gray for her shoulder pieces there, as you can see, because her arms are a different color. So same color is used here that I used on her arms, I used on her legs here for her feet wrappings here. It's a dark gray. You can use black, but I actually prefer to use dark gray to represent black in a lot of instances like this, especially when there's a lot of color, because the black contrasts a little bit too much. And you also can't shade with it. Like you can see here, I took some lighter gray and I just dry brushed these little curves here, or folds I should say, just to try to bring out a little bit of that detail. And we also did do her toenails as well, and those are in black. So if we would have painted everything black, it would have all looked black. But you see how the black toenails contrast with the gray wrappings, because I didn't just use black. And I think it looks a lot better that way. So this next trick, I talked about filling up her wine glass. So I have some of this Mr. Resin that I've used before to make some clear tail lights on some tanks a while ago. And I also have this dye set for this stuff. So this garnet color was perfect for wine. And you'll see here, we just dye that resin a little bit and mix it up with our stirring stick. What I didn't record was the UV process, but I'll explain that in just a second. So all I did was use a pipette to pour that into the wine glass, and you'll see then it literally fills up the wine glass. And all I did was I put it under a nail curing thing that you can get on Amazon for like, I don't know, $15, and it UV cures out that resin. And then you can see here after it was cured, look how hard it looks. So it looks just like wine in that glass. So it's much better than trying to paint it on, because it literally is wine colored resin in there. So she does have this little patch of fur that kind of goes around her back of her neck, and I wanted to do this very similar to how I did the bear on X23. Is started with the black primer base, put in some rust colors with dry brushing, and then paint it brown. And then you can see I used the same gold marker on all those little pieces that she has, and that metallic gold really stands out. Here we can see what she looks like with all those pieces put in place, including the wings. The wings are a little difficult to assemble with that fur piece, but it did come together eventually. So the next step is her hair. You can see I dry brushed it with yellow, and again the idea was to use transparent red and kind of have highlights in orange. It didn't work out as much as I had hoped it would have, but it looks okay. That transparent red color is a really nice one for her hair. You can see I used that marker to do all of her little intricate details on her head, which there's a lot of. And then here we have her portrait with her black eyes, and then she actually has like these orangish colored eyes, so I took care of that as well with just some bright orange paint. And then I have to do her pupils, and once her pupils are on, then there really isn't much else to do besides sit back, relax, and enjoy how cool this model looks when it's all finished. I tell you what, this thing is such a nice centerpiece for a shelf. It's such a gorgeous piece with those wings. So if you learned anything today, leave a comment down in the comment section for me. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you to my patrons that support my work. Also want to say thank you to anyone who's ever checked out my website to see what kind of models I offer, checked out my portfolio, just for checking out this video on my channel. So I do appreciate it, guys. As you all know, my website is live. You can go on there and check out what kind of files I have available. If you're interested in models like this, I do offer commissions, so definitely go check out my website, see what's up there, and don't forget to use my discount code STORMYT2024 when you go to checkout to get yourself 10% off of my prices that are already lower than my eBay and Etsy prices. So definitely go check that out if you're interested. Make it a good day, guys.